Welcome to Lubera, the Swiss fruit and berry company and breeding company. My name is Markus Kobold, I'm founder of Lubera, and before my camera is Feli Fernandez, raspberry breeder in East Malling, Kent. Feli, we are standing beside a very nice variety. It's now middle of July. This primocane variety hasn't red fruit, but it's full of fruit. Can you explain me why this variety has a nice plant architecture?
Well, this is a very early primocane selection, as you can see.
It will have ripened fruit?
It will have ripened fruit in probably the end of next week, the beginning of the following week. Basically, it's the result of recurrent selection. So if you cross early material with good plant architecture with other early material that has good plant architecture, and you select consistently for branching. So I could have something like the one next door, and we have a lot of material like this as well, that has a more upright,
with more apical dominance.
Yes, more apical dominance and less branching, and that is more the typical architecture for a primocane raspberry.
We know from Autumn Bliss.
Autumn Bliss, for example, Autumn Treasure. There's lots of varieties like this. Now, when you go back to this one, what you can see is a habit that is more similar to that of a floricane. So the buds will actually break on the primocane season and they will develop a full lateral. So when I look at them and make note, this is what I call a well-developed lateral in a primocane, and that's a very desirable trait. So we select very strongly for good plant architecture, and obviously sometimes for commercial growers that architecture is better, an upright thing that they can manage with less.
It's easier to go into the plant.
It's easier to go into the plant, it's easier to prune, you don't have to support the laterals, so they both have positive and negative aspects. We tend to try and increase crop load by selecting material with slightly more branched.
So we have now learned about a little bit your goals in plant architecture. In terms of fruit size, color, what are your goals?
Well, there it depends very much where we're talking of the professional market for commercial production, or we're talking to the amateur market. When it comes to professional growers, fruit size is completely essential. Anything that is not at least 3 to 3.5 grams per berry, there is no point in looking at it. It doesn't matter how fantastic it might be for anything else. Firmness is essential because they have to be transported. When it comes to the gardener's market, I would think flavor is a lot more important. So whether they're a bit softer is not so much of a problem, but the flavor has to be there. Fruit size is also important. Nobody wants to spend 25 minutes to collect 100 grams. So they need to still be ideally over 3 grams, but nobody needs to have a 5-gram berries in their garden. As a commercial grower, that's a lot more important because picking time is very costly.
How do you measure quality?
We do it in a subjective manner, so we pick our trials twice a week, every week, from the first ripe fruit until they finish for the season. And we measured, we have several descriptors that we measure on a 1 to 5 scale, including redness, brightness, uniformity of size, skin strength that we determine by rubbing the fruit a determined number of times, and texture, which we determine by squeezing quite a few fruit. And basically over the year they will accumulate a number of scores. We will work out some averages, and we will come up with a ranking, as well as obviously me taking notes in the field every week.
When you are looking at your breeding pipeline, what are the future developments, especially for the home garden market? What colors, what types of plants?
Well, I have an interest in diversity, I suppose, like most breeders. I like to look at different things. So we have got a number of yellow apricot color raspberries, and that's a recessive gene in the raspberry gene pool, so it happens quite often. A lot of populations will have those, so we tend to select the best from that bunch. But also we have recently started working with the North American black raspberry, which is a cousin of the European red raspberry. They intercross very readily. As plant architecture, they can be quite different. And the black raspberries are tip rooting, and very, very spiny. So we are trying to cross them with their red cousins to make them a little bit more amenable to gardening, so not as spiny, or if possible spine-free, to incorporate pram-or-crane fruiting into them, and to make them a little bit more easy to grow. But the idea is that we will have some purples coming out of that first generation, and then we will select towards black again.
Okay, if you are thinking about primocane raspberries and floricanes raspberries, what are the tendencies in the market? Are you still breeding floricanes?
Less and less, but there is still a niche in the market for late season floricanes. So the very early floricanes are to an extent being replaced by double cropping of late-ish primocane varieties. So if let's say this variety was to crop down to here this season, I could cut it down and I could double crop the cane.
Our concept of two-timers.
Exactly. Yeah. So then to some very early floricanes is reduced, but you still have a niche in the market, you still have a gap. So most of the main season production will still finish by the first week of August. The majority of primocanes are still coming mainly from the end of August until the end of October in the UK. So you still have the end of August, the middle end of August, the first week of September, where the availability of commercially produced fruit is not very big. There's a lot of import fruit at that time. There is a gap there, so late season floricane are still very interesting, and the eating quality of the floricanes are better.
That was my point, because I was today testing and selecting in our joint breeding program some floricane out of your program, and some of them were really extra good.
Yes.
And so is quality a little bit still linked to floricanes?
In my opinion, there is no doubt in my mind that eating quality, flavor in particular, aromatic, is still better in the best floricanes that is on the best primocanes. The difference is less than it used to be. Some of the new material, primocane material, has got a lot better, but you still have some aromatics that are difficult to beat on a floricane.
Last question, Feli. We talked in the last interview. We talked about that you will have to breed fruit for another 30 years. How will the best primocane raspberry in 30 years look like?
What I would like to achieve in those 30 years, I would like to have, for the professional market, I would like to have a primocane raspberry that doesn't need to be double crop. I would like to go back in some respects to the original concept of a primocane, which is something that you can crop and you can remove the cane, so you don't have problems with pest and disease resistance. I would like excellent eating quality, both for the gardeners and the amateur markets, and improve disease resistance, so that we might be able to work with them in a more sustainable manner.
And for the home garden market?
Much the same, but also in addition to that, spinelessness and ease of cropping would be very important. So plant architecture like behind me, with the fruit quality of the ones you ate this morning.
And what colors?
All the colors.
All the colors.
All the colors.
So
I would love to see, before I retire, I would love to see in a punnet in front of me something that is more or less of the same shape and size in black, amber and red.
Okay, thank you very much.
That would be very happy.
Thank you very much, Feli Fernandez.
Verloren im Labyrinth, aber ich weiß den Weg. Hier geht's zu Lubera.com, zu unserem Shop mit über 5000 Gartenpflanzen und über 5000 Gartenprodukten. Hier geht's zum YouTube-Channel, da können Sie sich einschreiben. Hier unten, da geht's zu Gartenvideo.com, wo Sie viel einfacher durch unsere über 1500 Videos surfen können. Und hier geht's zu Garten.com, wo es mehr Garteninformation und mehr Gartenunterhaltung gibt. Und jetzt gehe ich weiter.